And we're live.
Are we? Be like, oh, hello there. We are back. It is day like 19, I think. No, I'm just kidding. Spent a lot of time cleaning these. They look pretty good. Always have some horror story, dude.
Love that smell.
Things I like and things I don't like. It came out pretty good. It's a little bit of pitting in the metal, certain areas around some of the water jackets, which I don't love, here and here. But nothing that will screw anything up. Also, you did find out, if you look over here, we ran the numbers off these pistons. They are a Speed Pro piston. They've been bored 30 over. So the bottom end of this has been gone through and has been built, which makes sense because that's probably when you put the heads back on. And like I said, he probably used the original bolts. Probably sent the block out, had that done, had the rotating assembly put in, then threw the heads on himself. Like I said, even this, it's nice and clean. I spent a lot of time on it, but you can see there's a bit of pitting and stuff right here. The metal's kind of nasty. I'm hoping it won't be a problem. It shouldn't be a problem. Gaskets cover most of that and everything, but I think it'll be fine. We're doing it. Alright, so, torque wrench. Awesome, torque wrench. They're good. You need one of those. Also, did you know if you go to the Snap-on truck, they have this cool device there? You can check your torque wrench on it. It'll tell you if its torque is accurate still. Which is good if you have an old one like I do. Because I actually bought this one from some guy named Tyan. Because it's Snap-on and it's got a lifetime warranty, so why not? Why buy them new? But, you know, whatever. Alright, so, a lot of these, when you buy them like an ARP bolt, I know for sure, they have a certain stretch point on them. They'll come with like a moly lube or some sort of lube that helps it achieve the stretch. This style I'm using doesn't. You don't need any sort of lube. You're not actually supposed to use any sort of it. You're supposed to do that. But what I do like to do is take like a drop or two of oil and either put it on the back, like the head of the nut, just to keep it from kind of galling as you're tightening it way down, or just a drop on the actual like head surface itself. I don't know if you need to. It's something I've been doing forever. I'm not going to stop now. So let's just put these in here in this nice tray. They actually invented, believe it or not, they invented the valley simply to hold your tools while you're working on the heads. Like that's a thing. Look it up. I'll look it up.
And can you tell our viewers why you're not using coconut oil?
Fuck you. Let's just start with these little guys. All I'm doing right now is starting them all. Alright, now I'm just going to tighten them down just a bit, just to snug them. Because like I said, everything we'll do it the proper torque spec. And talk about this. This is super important. This is the sequence. I think I showed it earlier, but either way. Even when you're snugging them down just a bit, do it in sequence. Seriously, do it in sequence. It's time to start torquing these things down. Depending how many passes you want to do, a lot of people say to do 3 passes or 2 passes. I like to do 3. It doesn't hurt. The final torque on these, I believe, is 65, so I'll do it at like 25, 45, and then 65 will be the final torque. Make sure you do it in sequence. Let's talk about something else too, like that's where I'm here. There's a lot of debate on what kind of torque wrench to use. You can use the clip kind, like I'm using. There's also the kind that has the bar in it, which I have in my toolbox, which I'll show you, where it'll bend the bar until it's actually showing how much force is being applied. A lot of people like those ones. I personally don't, because I like this one. That's really it. Like, realistically, I think the other ones are better, but I like this guy. It's my favorite. So I'm using this one. And like I said, I'm going to start at 25, and then I'll go up from there. man. 17. We're done. Heads on. We're good. End of the video. Yeah. No, I'm just kidding. It's not that bad at all. Well, when I was done working on it, though, I sprayed it down with a bunch of WD-40 just to keep it oiled so it wouldn't start rusting or anything. Which is, well, that's what I do to raw fucking metal or parts like that. Question is, can I just like crawl under with it? Fuck no. No, I think about it. Yeah, that's not gonna happen.
Sneak peek of camera girl Julie.
Hey, what's up?
Done. There we go.
I'm doing so slow and weirdly.
Dude, I'm trying not to drop it.
Just.
So that's good for all those. For now. Cool. Do the other side. I'm not even gonna put the spark plugs in. Because then I'm not gonna put the headers on because I saw us do that on the last video on the Oko.
Those are two different bolts.
Oh, but yes. That's weird. It's almost as if this thing was put together with spare parts. It's really, I'm okay with that. Heads are on. I'm happy. Everything's clean. Everything's ready to go. My intake gets here. Cool. Dude, actually, I'm super pumped on this intake. I mean, it's nothing special. It's just like a air gap. But I have never in my life purchased an intake. I've always like traded for them, so they've always been used, you know? So like I've never bought one. Like this time I bought one. It's like now I'm an adult. Like I was like maybe dumb. I know people are like, oh, it's just an intake, dude. But like, I never owned a new intake.
It's the first one.
Yeah. They've always been all shitty, and I've like had to sandblast them or just clean them or fuck it, just run it. You know? They've been all grimy. Oh, I can show you what made me finally decide to buy one too. When we pulled this thing off, I noticed we had this cool brake right here. Where'd the other piece go? Wait. Yeah, so it was already broken though. You can tell he like glued it back on and had the washer. And realistically, we could have made that work. I'm just saying, like, once we pulled the heads off and saw that they were 30 over, I was like, hey, let's make this thing breathe a bit better. So I decided. I bought a new manifold. Now there can be danger to manifold. This was painted over. I sanded it enough that I can actually see it. But in order to make it easier, I'm just going to make a mark on 0. Right there. This paint pen that is now running and fucking everything up. That was awesome. I knew it was going to do that, dude. Yay. Let me get a rag.
I got you.
There. Where that white mark is. Okay? So we're going to spin the motor over until there'll be a line here. Until that line meets 0. That's where I'm rotating the motor to. Should be getting close to being able to see the line.
Hold on. Keep going. Okay, so you've reached the first indentation.
Like, as in not where I need to be?
Yeah, you're not where you need to be. Keep going. Almost there. Just a little smidge. Okay, just a smidgen more. Okay, you're like just a tiny bit more. There you go, perfect.
Alright, cool. Now I'll explain. Alright, so we're about to adjust the valves. I'm going to show you an easy way to do it. There's a lot of different ways out there. I know a lot of them. Pretty much all of them can work. All of them will work. Some are better than others. And no matter which way I show you, someone's going to tell me I did it wrong, but that's okay. Because if you do it this way, it should be fine. It saves a lot of time. And if you're very close and you need to do a little further adjustment, whatever, that's fine. That's the way valves work. First thing you need to do is find top dead center on the number 1 cylinder. So you have 2 top dead centers. You have the number 1 top dead center, you spin the crank over, you have exactly 360 degrees, and you have top dead center on number 6. So you need to find it on number 1. The way you do that is just like we did earlier in the video. You roll the engine over with your finger over the spark plug and the number 1 cylinder. When it pushes out a bunch of air, you're close. Just roll it farther to the 0 like we just did, and then we can start adjusting. But this is the way you adjust it. So you have top dead center on the number 1 cylinder. Then you have exhaust and intake. And I'm terrible with this marker, and I'm sorry. But, so, when you're on number 1, at top dead center on the number 1 cylinder, you can adjust 1, 3, 4, and 8 on the exhaust, and 1, 2, 5, and 7 on the intake. Then, you can roll the motor over 360 degrees, so you're on number 6, and then exhaust and intake. No, full 300.
And 60?
Full 360 degrees.
Okay. Wouldn't that bring it back to 1?
No. Alright. Let me, that's a good point. Let me explain why that doesn't bring it back to 1 when you do 360 degrees. So, the way it works is your crank will do 2 rotations for every 1 rotation of the cam. The way you know this is when you look at the timing gears. You have the little one on the bottom, which is your crank, and the big one on the actual cam. So, when you're at top dead center, you're either top dead center on number 1 or number 6. You spin it around 360 degrees, and you're there. So in order for the cam to do 1 rotation, the crank does 2 rotations. Okay? So you're going to spin it around 360 degrees to the number 6 cylinder. I hope that made sense. It's a little confusing at first. Once you do it like 27,000 times, it's a lot easier. Or, if you don't understand it, that doesn't matter. Wait for the air to push out on your thumb on the number 1, and then bring that back down to 0, and then just do this, and you'll be fine. Where was I? Oh yeah, so on the exhaust, you're at 2, 5, 6, and 7, and on the intake, you're at 3, 4, 6, and 8. It's an awful 8. Cool. Now, I'll get in the car, and I'll adjust it, so you'll see now. That's the order you're going to adjust in. Now I'll show you how to actually adjust it. Grab a wrench. Alright, so let me show you a little bit more about what I was talking about. I have it split between exhaust and intake. If you don't know which one's which, this is your header, this is your exhaust manifold, whatever you have right here. Whichever one is in line with it, that is your exhaust. The other one next to it is your intake. They do not necessarily go intake, exhaust, intake, exhaust. Depending on which small block you have, they don't. Ford, Chevy. Yeah, for instance, this one's exhaust, intake, intake, exhaust. So just remember, if you get confused on which one you're doing, look for the header, look for the exhaust port, you'll be fine. Now, we're going to go ahead and start adjusting this guy. We're going to set the 0 lash right here. So, you've got some up and down wiggle. You can either do it from the push rod, or you can do it from here. Both ways work good. A lot of people just go up and down. Just make sure your push rod stays seated. Or you can do the rotating. Basically, you're rotating until you start feeling the pressure change. Now, when you do that, you see you have nothing at all. That's probably a little tight. I like to back it off so you can feel it. I actually like it back here. I think that gives it more accuracy. You can feel it. It's okay to have left and right movement. You're just looking for up and down. I have 0 up and down, but there's not a lot of tension on it. So, you see, nothing at all really. That was number 1 on the exhaust, and as you can see, we're also going to do number 1 on the intake. So same thing, you can, whichever way you kind of like. You can do the rotation method, you can do the lift up method. Whatever you do though, make sure you take your socket away from it before you decide you're at 0 lash, because you can be putting force directly on it and it will change. I'll show you what I mean. So we're like nowhere near it, but if you tilt it, you'll lose a lot versus now we're super loose. Now we're like have a seriously less travel. So just make sure when you're actually testing it, you take your socket or wrench or whatever you're using out of it. Yeah, see, we're really close now, but you see how much that gained? So if you're on it, it feels like we're pretty much there. You take it off, we have tons. That's something to keep in mind. So that's pretty good right there. You can see it's still moving just a bit. You don't want to put a lot of force because you can compress the lifter. So you want to give it a tiny bit. You're not looking for a whole lot. I need just a bit more. We're good. That's where I want it. So again, So to like any position really. You're just gonna go 180 degrees, so half a full turn. So right. And you're adjusted. These two are good. If you want, you can do a quarter turn. I like a quarter turn usually if it's mine. Sometimes you got to add a little bit more, but a half turn will keep you like kind of perfectly in spec. A lot of people do a full turn. I don't like to do a full turn. I've had them when they hang open just a bit, but usually you're fine. I think you're like if you went like full on standard spec, you'd be looking at like a full turn, not half like I just did. But I like it. So now that's essentially the number one. We can move to the exhaust on number 3 and the intake on number 2, and so on and so forth. Then we'll rotate the motor over so we're on top dead on number 6 and do that half. Cool. That's really it. It's really easy to do your head gaskets at the end of the day. It's just, take it one piece at a time. It's kind of a slow process, but it's pretty easy on an old V8, as you saw. So cool. All right.